Hi everybody, we are back today making some basil pesto out of basil from the garden. I had a big pot of basil. It grows really quickly down here in Florida, and it was starting to go to flower and then seed, so it was telling me it was ready to be picked. So I've already washed and dried this. I've taken them off the stems, see? Take your leaves off the stems. Don't want the flower buds. Don't want any yellow leaves or dried ones. And then just toss the stem aside. Here's a whole batch that I just stuck it in water. It's the best way to keep your basil just on the countertop in water. It really doesn't like to be stored in the refrigerator. So if you buy it from the store, just stick your stems, clip the bottom of the stems, stick it in water next to a window, and it'll do fine for several days. I'm going to use this for another recipe, so I'm going to set that aside. So I've got quite a bit, as you can see here. Our recipe calls for 2 cups, so I'm just going to make one recipe full for you guys. So I'm going to take some leaves, measure them, pack them in here nice and tightly. There's 1 cup. Put it in my food processor. Now, if the basil is a little bit too strong for you, or if you want something a little lighter in flavor, you can also substitute part spinach leaves if you don't have quite enough basil. I love the basil, so all right, there we go. So just pack it down nice and tight. 2 cups of basil leaves. Okay? Makes a nice full food processor there. Here's a leaf that has a little brown on it. I don't want that. Okay, get rid of that. All right, the next thing you want to put in here is some, we're just going to put it all in here at once. Brown leaf. We want some garlic. It calls for 3 cloves of garlic, which I really don't like that when they go with cloves, because some cloves are tiny and some cloves are big. So 3 teaspoons, which is 1 tablespoon, and an easy way to peel your garlic, if you don't know, take a big knife, put your hand on top of the blade and just press down on your garlic, and as you can see, it just slips right out of the skin very easily. And then we're going to just mince that up a little bit and measure it. Don't have to be perfectly minced, because the food processor will do a lot of the work. It's a quick and easy recipe. Here's my tablespoon. Let's see how close I came. Those were 2 pretty big cloves. That looks pretty good. I add just a little bit more. Okay. So there's my tablespoon of garlic. 3 teaspoons of a tablespoon. And if you like more garlic, by all means add it. This is not, we're not baking, so this is not a chemistry experiment. Do this according to your own taste. 1/2 cup of freshly grated Parmigiano Romano. You can use, this is shredded, this is this way. You can use either one, it doesn't matter. I might use 1/2 and 1/2 today. So 1/2 cup, you part this and part this. Whoops, all stuck together. More. Parmesan cheese is pretty salty. For this recipe, we don't add a whole lot of salt to it. Parmesan cheese. And the next ingredient is pine nuts. 1/3 cup of pine nuts, which I have right here. If you do not have pine nuts, and they're quite expensive, you can actually use walnuts. They substitute quite well. I happen to have these. I keep them in my freezer. Keeps them fresh. I keep all my nuts in the freezer, by the way. 1/3 cup of pine nuts. This Nuts have oils in them that will go rancid if you don't. I buy them in big quantities, so they stay very well in there. All right, and the last big ingredient is olive oil. Nice extra virgin olive oil, half a cup. Remember, when you're measuring liquids, you want to hold this measuring cup up to eye level. Half a cup. Oh, that's way too much. Okay, too much. Save that for the next recipe. And also, depending on how tightly you pack those basil leaves, may need a little more olive oil. We'll see. We'll start with a half a cup. So we've got our 2 cups of basil leaves, our half a cup of Parmesan or Romano cheese, half a cup of olive oil, 1/3 of a cup of pine nuts. We need some salt and pepper. Okay, we need 1/4 teaspoon only of salt. I like this pink Himalayan sea salt. Remember, Parmesan cheese is pretty salty, so you don't need too much. 1/4 teaspoon and 1/8 teaspoon of pepper. So I don't really have an 1/8 teaspoon measure, but half of my 1/4 works just fine. And everything is in there. Let's get this out and pulse it a few times. And then turn it on. And I think I can scrape the sides down just a little bit. Pretty nice texture. If it's a little too dry for you, you could add a little extra olive oil. If it's a little too liquidy, a few extra basil leaves and cinnamon. This seems really perfect to me. So this is what it looks like. Looks just like that. Holds its shape, mounds well. Now, what do you do with this? Because I use it on white pizzas, I use it on pasta, I use it on chicken, could use it on fish. But how do you store it until you're ready to use it? So there's a couple different ways you can store it. One, my favorite way to do it is I take a tray with some parchment paper and I take a spoon, and put some mounds on here. Get a nice, good, generous spoonful. And then I take this and I put it right in the freezer until it freezes solid. And then I can take those frozen little mounds and put them in a baggie, mark them pesto, and I can pull out as many as I need when I need to use them. Now, a couple of other ways you can store it is you can put it straight in a baggie and then store it like that in a baggie. I suggest that you put it in here, flatten it out. That way, if you want to break it up easily and just get parts of it, you can. And the last way you can store it is to put it in a jar and keep it in your fridge if you're going to use it pretty soon. But make sure it gets dark, it oxidizes and turns dark on top. So what you want to do is, if you put it in a jar, you're going to take a little piece of plastic wrap and set it on top of it. I'll put a little piece in here and show you. As you can see, one recipe doesn't make as much as you might think with that whole full food processor. So there we go. I'll put some in there. Take my plastic wrap. I'll press it down on top so that no air can get to it. And then put the top on. Put it in the fridge and you're good to go. And that is it. That is quick, easy, and better than you will find in the store. No preservatives in it, no chemicals. You might want to taste it if it needs a little more salt or pepper to your taste. I always like to taste it before I store it. So there we go, that's it. And I'm gonna put the recipe up for you right now so you can take a snapshot of it or copy it down. And here we go.